Thank you for joining me on the Sports in the Making podcast. I'm your host, Don Cardona, and this is episode number 28. I have on my podcast today Claudia Trejos, a recently inducted Hall of Famer who has become a fixture in the boxing and fight scene. There are few people in this industry that are as unique and as genuine as she is. She's broadcast many sporting events in her career, getting her start at KTLA in Los Angeles, and she's also a motivational speaker and coach. We talk about all that, what it was like being inducted into the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame, and her interesting pastime that she learned from her father growing up in Colombia. I hope you enjoy my conversation with the one and only Claudia Trejos. This episode has visuals, so if you're listening, please be sure to subscribe to the Sports in the Making YouTube channel to see some of what we discuss. Well, there may not be a sufficient amount of adjectives to describe my guest on this episode of Sports in the Making podcast. Genuine, kind, funny, talented, and smart. Positive in energy, and of course, amazingly beautiful inside and out. Claudia Trejos joins me to talk about her now Hall of Fame career, a little bit about boxing, and how she's helping women be their best in their personal selves and professional lives. You may have seen Claudia at some of the biggest fight matches in the world, covering boxing in English and Spanish for broadcast networks, including ESPN, Telemundo, DAZN, and others. And I had the pleasure of working with and producing with Claudia for a number of years at ESPN on Viernes de Combates, which is Friday Night Fights at ESPN. Claudia, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a while since we've talked.
It's rained a couple of times, but it's great to be here, and it's awesome to see you. I know you went off to great pastures. You had a great time, and it's awesome to get a chance to talk to you again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. I see you on social media all the time. I see all the events you're working on. Just wish I was a little bit a part of the action again. But I'm having you on because I think you have a very interesting background, and I just wanted to share that with people. And this podcast is about getting to know people and what they've done and how everything works and how you do things. So the first question I have is, how did you get into sports broadcasting?
It was a matter of I was in the right place at the right time. Sports has always been in my life, but I was actually working part time in a station that does not exist anymore. It used to be Prime Ticket, later became Prime Sports, and later became Fox Sports. And I started back in the day, and I was working after school, and I was a grip, and from a grip I just kind of moved on. And I was covering baseball and hockey and basketball, and at the time we still had the Raiders in Los Angeles, so I was always there. So it was a mishmash of a whole bunch of things. And then slowly but surely, I was allowed to go into production. You know, I started with the typical cameraman, editing, producing, and one day a very dramatic moment in our lives as a family happened. And I had to leave school, and I was given the opportunity to work full time. And that was the beginning of the end.
How did you get into boxing then? Because I know your career, you've covered a lot of different things, but boxing seems to be where you've landed or are doing a lot of really great things. So how did boxing come into your life?
It's interesting because boxing has always been part of my family. It was I come from a big family, and my brothers would go to the gym, and it was the typical punishment or torture. If you're gonna go somewhere, you got to take your little sister with you. So I just kind of ran along. But boxing, I was into combat sports in general. By the time I was 8, I asked my dad for a speed bag, and I always had a knack for it, and I can't tell you that somebody taught me per se how to throw a punch. It was just, I know how to throw a punch, and when you're covering sports, you start refining what your fortes are, and boxing and basketball were my thing. And then obviously during the pandemic, I had to pivot and walk away from the NBA because I couldn't just sit around and wait for the NBA to start again. So boxing was one of those few sports. But in general, you've known this, you were there. So boxing has always been part of my family, of me, of my the material that my family's made of. It's very much involved in boxing, not necessarily because of my dad, but it was what kept my brothers busy. So it kept me busy and out of trouble. Later it got me into trouble, but we're not going to get into that.
That's okay. So talking about boxing and your broadcasting career, do you find any kind of correlation on how you're able to navigate the boxing world and sports broadcasting at all?
I think sports in general, since it was in my family life, it was a way of life. It was what we did. And I'm number 14 out of 17, so I come from a very competitive environment. So I was blessed to be given an opportunity to work in what I would do regardless, if that makes any sense. Meaning, I would be watching a basketball game or a baseball game. I would be there. I would be in front of the TV. And since I was a little girl, it was like we would stop to watch Carlos Monzon and Happy Lora, Kipambele, but we would also stop for the World Cup in general, the Olympics. So it's part of our fabric. Not necessarily because my dad had any type of inkling in particular for sports, but it was the competitiveness. When you're one of so many, it's natural. It's like you need to be bigger and faster. And I'm only 5'3" on a good day and 120 pounds soaking wet. So I didn't have much of a choice in terms of the physicality of it, but I guess my spirit was always there, very competitive. And I think that's what actually allowed me to weave myself into the world of sports in the US.
You have a presence that I think supersedes everybody. At least that's my experience with you. And then seeing what you've done when I am able to watch you on TV, it just seems like you command this space that I would imagine has something to do, like you said, with your family, but then also being in that environment. How are you able to give yourself that presence?
Don, that's a very good question, because as a matter of fact, in the motivational chats that I do have, it's that belief that you carry with you that comes with, putting your flying hours, doing your homework, and being ready to be ready, if that makes any sense. And it hasn't always been like that. I have to admit, 30 years ago when I first started, one of the biggest issues that we have as a pro, no matter what you're doing, male or female, imposter syndrome kind of like seeps in, especially when you're doing something that you really love. Then you're starting to wonder, did I say the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I falling short in something else? And you kind of like grow into the opportunity that fell in your lap. That's at least what happened to me. That was my experience. I grew into this opportunity. And I know this is going to sound like I'm demeaning or putting down my role in the world of sports, but I'm a glorified fan. Again, I would be doing this. I'd be watching the games. I would be going to the games. I'd be going to the fights. Even if this is not what I did for a living, I would be very much involved, with stats and rankings, and because I love it. So when you have that passion and love and you put all that in, I learned the hard way that it does love you back. The hard way, because for years I had horrible Mondays. Monday morning quarterback. Well, I was a Monday morning sports anchor in Los Angeles for years, because I wasn't sure of me or what I did or if I was doing it right, until I had to have a vámonos a Jesus with conversation with myself and recognize, listen, do you do your homework? Yes. Do you love what you do? Yes. Are you trying to fake it? No. What I do is real. And I guess the presence that you mentioned has to do with the fact that what you see is what you get. And you've seen me, good times, bad times, good shows, bad shows. I take it all with a stride, because I'm still doing what I love. And I think that goes hand in hand. Despite the years of questioning and, bashing my head against the wall, that happened many times, I'm still very much in love with what I do.
The confidence you may have, at least my perception is, some of the things I listened to in my research in preparing for this interview is you have pulled cable, you have been a PA, you've worked through a lot of different things, which gives you that broader base that you know what you're talking about, so no one can push you around. Would you say that's somewhat part of it?
100%. You nailed it on the head. I hear, or many people ask me, well, I want to do what you do. And I said, go for it. I am number one supporter for that young crowd that's coming to take over. I'm no seed, so I'm not going to be here forever. But the one thing I need to instill in this new generation coming up is there is no shortcuts. There is no highway. There is no, I'm just going to get there because of this. No, the only way to have the presence, to be able to even have a bad day and be able to pull it through. Because, Don, we've had great shows. We've had bad shows. We've been together. And we pull through. I mean, something didn't go quite as we expected it to be or anticipated it to be. Because of the time and the flying hours and being there, we know how to pivot and we know how to, okay, so we're going to roll with that punch and then we're just going to move to the next topic or next graphic, and we know how to fix it. But the only thing that gives you that and that assertiveness is the flying hours, the repetition, the being there, and understanding that there's a lot of people involved. It's not just you as a producer. It's not just me as an anchor, and it's not just a director. We all work together, from the grip to the director to the anchors. We all have to work together. And somebody might have a bad day. And that's why the rest of us have to pull through. And again, that confidence that I got it comes from putting in the hard work with love and passion, not begrudgingly. Because again, how many times have we lost a mic during an interview?
Or a graphic, or
a graphic. Well, how many, we can tell stories till we're blue in the face. But we know that, okay, so this mic went down, and so we just take one off, and then we start doing the back and forth until we get that fixed.
Right.
Because it is going to get fixed. And even if it doesn't get fixed, you know who notices that? You and I, because we work on TV.
Exactly. Now we're talking about the way you prepare. You've worked on a lot of big events, most recently the Canelo GGG fight. For an event like that, how do you prepare for that? Because you do know Canelo, you do know GGG, you know all the players involved from the many years you've been covering boxing. But for an event like this, how do you prepare? What is the process that you go through?
Well, for a fight like that, you need to understand where these fighters come from. It's a trilogy, and when we're talking about trilogies in boxing, those are huge. And I'm sorry I'm being so relaxed just because I just got back from Las Vegas, so I'm kind of still unpacking. And so I'm just sitting here in my living room chilling. It's one of those things that you need to know the evolution of both fighters from fight number 1 to fight number 2, and then you can slowly but surely put together the scene of what we can expect on fight number 3. We go through numbers, we go through video. It's so I know, for example, Don, you have your background is baseball, and that's your number one passion. So it's like when we're looking at rivalries, like the highway rivalry, when we talk about the subway rivalry, we know what to expect from the Mets and the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Giants. And back in the day when the Dodgers and the Angels, Ducks and Kings, we know those rivalries. So we understand, and we look at stats and we look at numbers and we see what's changed, what has changed in every single fighter's corner. How did they do in their last fights in between, for example, now that we're looking at the third, who they fought between the second and the third, what kind of patterns we saw in each fighter. And then obviously nowadays we have stats. Back in the day, we didn't have stats in boxing. We had stats in baseball forever and a day, stats in hockey forever and a day, football for God's sakes. But now we have the privilege to have punch stats and understand and break it down numerically, which is brilliant. I love it because it gives you a more precise image of what could happen in that third fight. But in boxing in particular, trilogies are part of history. So you got to be respectful of who these fighters are, the type of animosity they have, why that animosity has been created. And it takes a couple. I prepare for a couple of weeks because I cannot digest all that information in one sit down. So I put together my notes. I keep my own stats, and whenever we show up for a fight, is a big old deck of papers this big, and we're seeping through it. But it's diligence. It's loving it and understanding. In the case of Canelo, he was just a kid in the first fight, and now he's a 32 grown man, whereas Gennady for the second fight was 36, and now he's 40. Is that basic statement that I just told you right there gives you a very clear scene of what was going to happen.
Yeah, how does the relationship with athletes at that level progress? Because you seem to have a way of getting inside their firewall. I would imagine with men they're probably going to be a little more standoffish. Maybe it's the same from a woman's perspective, but you seem to have cracked that shell. I would imagine it has something to do with your authenticity.
I would like to think of it that it's because I'm authentic, that I don't get in their business, that I'm there to do boxing business. I'm friendly, I'm cordial, and I still keep my distance. I'm very respectful of their craft. If I have something negative to say, I'm going to say it with fundamentals. I am going to back it up, and I am going to try to be as respectful I can be. And that goes across the board. I think a lot of times, because we are led by passion as sports people, I don't think any athlete wakes up in the morning and say, I'm not going to give a shit today, so I'm not going to try to bat 500. I'm just going to fuck it. I don't think anybody says that.
Right.
I don't think anybody says, shit, I'm going to go on the ice and I'm just going to miss every goal that I slap. No. I don't think any soccer player is going to say, today I am just not going to play my best. Because sports in general is about passion. I mean, there's nobody that... I don't think anybody likes to lose. I think losing is perhaps the most humbling and the most useful lesson for an athlete, but a very painful one. Because this is where I come from. These guys, sometimes we put in 8-10 hours. We have long hours, like in events that we've covered, like Super Bowl, World Series. We put 16-18 hours nonstop. These guys, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. An athlete lives a completely different life than we do. They sleep, drink, eat the sport that they practice. They usually have to sacrifice their youth, their high school, their college lifestyle to be able to become pros. And in the pro lifestyle, everybody works with injuries, pain, and Father Time does not give anybody a break. And one has to be very careful of whatever they say and criticize and just blurt out because, we had a bad day at the office. We're talking about somebody that lives and dies with a win or a loss.
Right. And with athletes too, especially in boxing, mm-hmm. There's a very rigid type of aura or personification but they're humans just like us, and they have their fragiles and their insecurities, and so I would think in boxing, it's the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Would you say that's accurate?
100%. So I'm just going to give you a very clear example of what that means. When Anthony Joshua, who was a gold medalist in the Olympics, representing England in London, and he had just beaten Vladimir Klitschko in what was expected to be a dominant force by the Ukrainian, and he went down, Klitschko went down. It was an epic fight. Now he has to do his his debut in America at Madison Square Garden, and you and I have talked about this as being the mecca of boxing in the U.S. And he's fighting somebody that was not even recognized, Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz, for those that see amateur boxing, we knew the power that Andy brought in. We also knew that he came from a very, very tough fight against Joseph Parker, yada, yada, yada. But the regular fan doesn't know that. Anthony Joshua was by far the favorite. We're talking, it was like a 3-point spread. It was ridiculous. And he lost by knockout, by a technical knockout. Anthony Joshua was never the same. I am not going to say that he's not the same fighter. I'm not going to say that he doesn't have the skills. I'm just going to put that aside. I'm just saying, the bigger you are, the harder they fall, just following what you said, because he was expected to dominate at Madison Square Garden and be able to bring all the, the English fans, the Mexican fans, because Andy Ruiz is Mexican, the Mexican fans, the Irish fans, everybody at Madison Square Garden, and he was supposed to take that win all the way back to England and still be recognized as one of the greatest heavyweights. And then we were supposed to look into a Deontay Wilder-Anthony Joshua fight. Well, he lost to Andy Ruiz. There was no Deontay Wilder fight, and everything just kind of fell through. Perfect example of, anything can happen in a ring. Anything.
I was listening to a few podcasts prior to us talking, and I believe it was on Samir Azizi's podcast. You had mentioned the difference between professional athletes and Olympic athletes, because you did cover the Olympics, and you said you preferred the Olympic athletes, which surprised me a little bit. What were the reasons for that, or why do you think that?
And it depends on what sport, but there's that, I don't want to say transparency, because it sounds like pros are not transparent. But you're doing this for your country. And I'm not going to say that I preferred. I would say that I'm a huge admirer of the amateur athlete that gets to that level. We're talking about la creme of the creme, representing a flag and doing it for the love of the sport and their country. And let me just make this clear, not all the delegations have the kind of money that a delegation from US or the UK or Canada has. A lot of times these athletes basically scrape the bottom of the barrel to just be able to make it there. Very little support from their own countries and different sports organizations. So when they show up, this is do or die for them. And you feel it when you're there. You feel the intensity. You feel the level of competitiveness, the respect they have for each other. And as you know, there's cycles. And in these cycles, these athletes get to know each other. And they get to know their patterns, and they get to know their habits. And it's, as much as it could be a rivalry, it's actually a camaraderie. So when one falls, everybody falls with them, and they're willing to, even if they're not from the same country, obviously. It's beautiful to see how the sportsmanship is not just part of the competition. It has to do with the spirit of having a true and clean competition, meaning if you fall and I beat you, This is not quite fair. So I'm going to walk you. I don't know if you remember in Rio, there was this, I don't remember exactly if it was, but it was in the walk. And it was not signaled properly. And I believe it was from Somalia. I believe, I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that.
Were you
But
there?
no, I was in Rio.
Okay.
No, the last Olympic I covered was Beijing.
Okay.
So, but I see it, obviously. So what
Well,
happened?
sorry. Let me just pause you real quick. I'm only asking because I was actually producing Boxing on Site with Chris Mannix for NBC, and so if you were there and I didn't see you, I would have been very upset because
Well, I
I
was
was
really
surprised
upset
you
because
weren't
I
there.
didn't get to do amateur boxing. I haven't been able to do amateur boxing in 2012, which was to me the most groundbreaking moment for boxing when we allowed women's boxing in.
Yes.
So let's not get into those details. Moving right along. Uh, the guy had a lead, and I'm gonna say maybe 10 feet, and it was not signaled properly, so he was going to take the left turn. So the guy that was behind him, maybe 10 feet, just said, don't go there, being totally clear that if he took off, he was either going to be disqualified or he was just not going to make it as first. He was still going to take second. And he took his time and said, listen, don't go there. I'm still behind you. It's not on that end. What did that show me? Once again, it's a fair competition. I am not going to take advantage of a bad moment because that was it. That was a bad moment. It had nothing to do with skill or ability. And I am going to take the position that I deserve because it wasn't his fault if he was going to take second,
Right.
or if he was going to be DQ'd. So those are the things that I just find brilliant, that, and like that, we have countless of stories in the Olympics of just helping each other, and they're just kids. They're just kids that love and have passion for what they do.
Well, that was special to me because for some reason there was no Spanish broadcasting presence at boxing, if you can believe that. And I'd see all these guys walk by, you know, from Latin American countries on my first day, and I thought no one is talking to them. Really, the pool was so shallow. You talked about Joshua; he was there with the BBC next to us, but I took it upon myself that second day to actually interview him, and if they live somewhere, great. And turns out that Telemundo actually used them, which was nice. And just seeing the passion and the tears and the joy, when they won or lost, passing by me, I just felt this is an amazing experience. And I know that that's something that you've experienced much more, being on the front lines for that. When we talk about broadcasting in different languages, I know you're multilingual, but is there a difference when you're covering something in Spanish versus English?
You know, it's funny you asked that because I have a hard time covering, for example, NFL in Spanish, meaning being true Spanish. Like I would still use my anglicized version of quarterback and running back and halfback and fullback. I just don't know how to say that in Spanish. So it's weird because, and I even have a hard time, as Hispanic as baseball is, and you and I know that. I wouldn't even know how to say ground rule double in Spanish.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a good idea of how to say that myself.
Yes, I mean, you know what I'm saying. There's
Yeah.
certain things that are a lot easier to express in particular languages. Perhaps the one language that I don't have a problem going back and forth is boxing. Basketball, I've done a smooth transition, maybe because I've covered it for so long in Spanish. But the NFL still is just...
Yeah. And that's okay. But is there a different way that you approach things in Spanish and English as far as maybe what you're putting together, or is it mostly like when you're talking to the camera?
I do notice that I'm a lot more Latin when I speak Spanish, meaning emotional and loud, and I tend to keep my composure a little bit better when I speak English. Maybe because it is my second language, and it's I'm still trying to, there's certain things again that are very easy for me, then come in, like second nature, and there's some things that I want to make sure that they are understood right, that I'm coming across as respectful and proper as possible. And sometimes, trust me, I'll find myself doing the Ricky Ricardo in English, and it's like hilarious. I have the Hispanic emotion with the English, and the Hispanic accent is beautiful.
No, I just think it's great, because as you know, I've produced in both Spanish and English, and I do know slight differences in maybe terminology. Of course, that's an obvious thing, but even the way it's done, like the relationships with some of my colleagues that have worked in baseball, they're able to get interviews a heck of a lot easier, even with English people sometimes, or English speaking people. And I'm not quite sure, and I think that's why I asked the question, because I can't put my finger on what that actual observation is, but I do notice a difference.
I think it has a lot to do with warmth. We're warm people, naturally. Not to say that other people are not warm, but
It's very familial.
yes, and we behave like we are family. I'm gonna give you. So again, I'm gonna go back to somebody who's not Hispanic, like Gennady Golovkin, but I've known Gennady for ever and a day. So I will. It's almost like that. Remember when we were talking about how my presence and all that good stuff? But there's always that level of, may I? Do you think it's okay? And be very cognizant of their time and their space. And it goes with, and I know this is going to sound weird, with that feeling of, I shouldn't be here, but I am. And I'm here to do a job. So is it okay? It's almost like, I don't want to say we're meek, but we're very aware that this is a very private space. It's a very personal space, and we are just a fly on the wall. So we, very much like what you did right before we started this conversation, that you said, I have these pictures, and I said, well, I'd rather not use those just because they're distracting. They're very distracting.
Right.
But I think you're the first one to ever ask. Does that make sense?
It does, actually, and maybe it's a part of being humble. I don't know,
Yes.
but I do want to respect, like you said, I want to respect your privacy. I want to respect your thoughts on something, because in my view, this podcast is collaborative. I'm not looking at it for myself. I'm looking at to highlight you and what you've done in your career, because I think it's special, and again, that's why I really wanted you to be on this, because you are such a nice person, both inside
Thank
and
you,
out.
Don.
So, transitioning just a little bit now, and keeping with that career aspect, you just had what I consider, and I'm sure many other people feel the same way, a major accomplishment. You are now in the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. How did that happen?
I'm still wondering the same thing. I'm still like, it's hung on this side of the my office.
You are immortalized.
I know.
How does that feel?
Heavy.
Heavy.
Very heavy.
Interesting.
Heavy. I mean, those are there's when you get that phone call, and I mean, I was given a heads up very quickly. It was pretty much like, hey, you're going to expect a call on such and such date. Make sure you pick it up. It's from so and so. And in my book, it's like, oh, I'm going to help out. Yeah, sure, whatever. So, hey, what you do? His name is Steve Canton. He says, hey, so I'm calling you to let you know that your peers have elected you to be part of the Florida Hall of Fame.
And you had no idea. Wow.
And I still have the same reaction. My daughter was with me, and it was the longest 5 seconds. And Steve said, "Are you there?" And my daughter answered, "Oh, she's here, but you actually you were able to do something nobody has ever done. She's quiet."
I oddly enough, I can envision that because you're just a fun person, and I think that's why you talk so much. But what an honor to be recognized by any Hall of Fame. Um, and you've had some accomplishments that were previous to that, and I think that's part of the reason why you were accepted. You were, if I'm not mistaken, you were the first woman to call boxing as an analyst
Hmm. Ever. And
ever.
to do play by play, yeah.
And so I mean there are special moments in here, and speaking of the Hall of Fame, I do have some pictures that I'd like to show, and I'd like to get your thoughts on what those are, and I'll just rip through them. What are your thoughts going into that venue to accept this honor?
Uh, I was just in awe. And the ring, oh my God, when you get the ring, it's like, and I was very blessed. I had the opportunity to take my daughter with me. And then I had a group of friends that flew from Colombia, from South Africa. Um, and I was just, you know, these ladies, they love me regardless. Be it good, bad, or indifferent, they love me. But the fact that my peers would recognize my career, they don't have to love me. They don't need to do that. I mean, there's a lot of people that work in sports, and there's a lot of people that have done outstanding work in the world of boxing. And for them to take their time and recognize me and my trajectory, um, it was humbling. It was an honor. I mean, I shared the desk with David Tua. I covered David Tua. It's wow,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I was super
That
proud of you when I saw that. Here's you getting your fist cast.
I had to stand on a stool because I was so short, and it had to be straight, and there was no way I could do it because I'm so short. So they brought in a stool so I could do it and I could put it straight. So of course I was implementing the order in chaos, obviously, my motto.
And where will that live? What town or city is
It's
that in?
gonna live in Tampa, in
Okay.
the area of Tampa. It's That's where they have the Florida Hall of Fame. They might move it, but as of right now, it's in the Tampa area.
All right. And then, of course, you jumping for joy.
Yes, yes, of course, making, the silly gestures, and I was just ecstatic. I mean, and everything is so solemn and everything. Bob Alexander, who's been the ringside announcer for us many times at Friday Night Fights, as well as Boxeo Tecate and Solo Boxeo with Univision, and I did Boxeo en Telemundo, and I did it for NBC, and I did PBC, and Bob Alexander has been around forever, and I had the honor of having him call my name and his beloved wife give me the ring. It just feels like I went full circle because I started with young men and women that were trying to, make strides, and then I continued, and now they're part of the Hall of Fame, and now they're inducted, and they were there because a lot of the inductees of previous years were there to support, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. It
Yeah.
was beautiful to see.
Having a daughter in the amount of travel that you take her with you. She's kind of seen the business. Is that something that she might want to explore in the future?
Oh, Don, it's funny that you mentioned it because she's now a senior, and we're starting to get all the paperwork ready for her to start college. And she's a dancer. She's a ballerina, classical ballerina. And in a conversation we had about a week ago, she said, "Well, I might just minor on something." I said, "Well, yeah, she's very good at writing." And I figured maybe creative writing. She goes, "No, I might just try journalism." My heart sank. My heart sank. because she's never shown any inkling. I've never pushed her. She loves sports, but not like that. But I know she's got a knack for writing and putting stories together. So we know the value that has. We'll see. We'll just see.
Well, she's got a great role model in her mother. And that brings me to my next question. And that is, you are now a motivational speaker and coach. Mm-hmm. Is that how did that come about?
It started, oddly enough, during the pandemic. As you know, the NBA just stopped. I mean, in the middle of the game, somebody was not having a good day, they had tested positive, they stopped the game. The whole league stopped. So it was the NBA who first contacted me, because I know a lot of the people in management, and they said, well, you're always such a happy person, and they knew that I had started writing a book. And they said, how about if we just bring our marketing team so you can get them going, because they're really sad and these are some uncertain times. Sure enough, we had an hour that eventually became like almost 2 hours. And that was the beginning of that. I had already started writing a book. I'm still finishing it. As a matter, it's finished, but I haven't edited it, so it's a long process, actually. I wasn't aware that it was that complicated. And a lot of the tools that I've used personally to stay afloat in hard times, in difficult times, in challenging times, that's what the book is all about. About being a Hispanic female in the world of sports, specifically in full contact sports, and being able to do it in 2 languages, and being part of, the beautiful ESPN Disney family, and the KTLA family, and now the DAZN family, and how being authentic is key, and how sometimes we get caught in the middle of this rat race and we lose ourselves. And that was my process. That's exactly what happened to me. I got caught in the rat race. I lost myself. I hit rock bottom. And then I slowly but surely came up. The pandemic hit. It's another hit in my career. And those are tools that I think everybody has. They just people have a hard time seeing it, recognizing it. We're meant to thrive. We're not meant to just survive.
With you having gone through a lot of adversity in your life, and then the pandemic, which affected nearly everybody, what is your idea of how you can help people get through that? I know it's a lot of what we do sometimes is that experience, but have you found a way that maybe connects with somebody now that you've seen, and that's why you're taking that next step to help people?
It's digging from within, and it's showing that it can be done. So yes, I can only use what I've experienced myself. And my thing is, I don't have the answers for Don Cardona or Sophia Chang no. What I do have is the ability to show you that you can do it, that you've come this way, this long. What is it that you want? What have you already accomplished? We are so keen on looking at, oh my God, that goal is all the way over there. But we lose track of what all we've actually accomplished. And sometimes that's all you need to keep going, to see how many steps you've actually made, how many challenges you've conquered. And that's what I try to help people pivot, rather than saying that goal is so far away. They're just take a quick peek at that rearview mirror and remember where you came from. So perhaps you're not 100% perfect, but I assure you, you're at least 20% better than you were yesterday. And we still have tomorrow. And a lot of times we lose track of the joy of the moment. And that happens to us on a regular basis on TV. And I think I've I overcame that because of the business that we're in. If you're not allowed to, if you don't allow yourself to be you and screw it up sometimes and fuck it up, you will never enjoy the moment, because you're gonna always get caught in the, but I missed the graphic, or the soundbite didn't come up, or the mic was lost. At the end, nobody really notices. You notice it. The picture is that much more broader and wider. It's not just you. So you enjoy you and your moment, because whoever's watching a game is not focusing on your soundbite or the graphic. They're just watching the game. And so should you. And life is just that.
For anyone who's interested, it's claudiatrejos.com. And on your front page, it says, find the champion within you. And I think that's perfect because of the field that you're in, and the sport that you love so much, that people just have to fight a little bit harder. So I wish you the best of luck in there, and I'm sure you're going to do great.
Thank you.
Now changing gears once again in the short time we have left. When it comes to celebrities, there are so many that attend boxing matches. You've had the chance, I would imagine, to have talked to them, interview them, and just be a part of them. What is that like for people who may not know? Because a lot of these people are really untouchable.
They're perceived as being untouchable, but they're not.
Fair enough.
They're not. I mean, they're just people. They just happen to be in the limelight. And see, we are so ungrateful, because even though they have the superstar status, they're human beings. In the minute that they fall off grace, then all of a sudden they're not even worth talking to anymore. And we've had that conversation. Mm-hmm. It's a very unforgiving position to be in. You're only as good as your last show. You're only as good as your last movie. You're only as good as your last throw. You're only as good as your last anything.
Yeah.
And when you, in the minute that you understand that they're just people, then the conversation becomes organic. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can always touch base on, it's not easy to be Tom Brady. It isn't. It cannot be. It's not easy to be Julio Cesar Chavez or Julio Cesar Chavez's son. Mm-hmm. But they happen to be. They're just human beings. Right. And we are going to talk about their virtues and their victories, but along their path, they've also had rough patches. And that's what I like to extrapolate, how they go through those rough patches. How do they still show up? No matter how hard life is, and behind closed doors, they're having their own struggles, they still show up. And you know that good old saying, 90% of the battle is showing up? That is so true. That is so true. And I am very fortunate that I've had a 25-year relationship with most fighters that they're still active. I mean, I've known Canelo for 16. I've known Gennady for the last 10. And because I've been around so long, then I get a chance to see the new kids coming up. And in hockey, I remember meeting Wayne Gretzky, and he was having a really hard time. I was doing sports at KTLA in Los Angeles, and he was going through a rough patch for whatever reason. And Stu Nahan, may he rest in peace, he was with him, and he said, Wayne, I need to introduce you to Claudia Trejos. I was the new kid, the Hispanic girl doing weekend sports at KTLA. And I knew he was having a bad day. We had just been talking about it with Stu, but he showed up, and he was just a gentleman. Pleased to meet you. I'm Wayne Gretzky. I felt like saying, yeah, like, I'm not going to know who you are. But it was the nonchalant attitude. Like, I'm nobody particular. I just slapped out of a puck and I score goals. And I haven't scored a goal in like 4 games. I'm having a rough, he never said that. He just said, it's been a rough time. It's been a rough week. But he showed up. He still showed up, you know. And I took that. It was maybe a 3 minute conversation on camera. It was done. See you, bye. But he was so honest. So, and he's Wayne Gretzky. As a matter of fact, where is he? I have him around here somewhere. I'm still unpacking my bag. Oh, he's up there. But those are the things that I take with me. You know, I was there when Julio lost to Randall. Nobody expected him to lose. I was there when Mike Tyson lost to Douglas. Buster, you know, he had a great night, and Tyson moved on to still follow greatness. But he showed up.
Yeah. Well, some of these athletes that you've covered oftentimes become your partners on TV as well. And I have a few more pictures here, so thank you for allowing me to show these.
That's a 4 division world champion, Juan Manuel Marquez, and a 3 division world champion, Miguel Cotto. And that was the fight that never happened. We all expected them to meet at least at 140, and it never happened. Great friends. We've been see, those are the things that I love, and I get so emotional. And even though you had shown me the picture before we started taping, these are great souls. Great souls. I mean, they beat people up for a living. Don't take me wrong. You say the wrong word, they're very quick at stepping up.
Exactly.
But they're great souls.
Yeah.
Very good people.
This picture.
Ah, Julito. Oh, we go way back. Julio and I go way back. And talk about loyalty and honesty. And I've seen him in his heyday, and I've also been there in his worst days. And I've seen him cry on and off camera. And that's hard for me to see. But he's a great person, great friend, very loyal.
All right, next one.
Ah, Juan Manuel. That's Juan Manuel Marquez. We're now, as a matter of fact, I'm flying out to Cancun, and I will be doing fights with him in Cancun for Pro Box. Well, that's Ricardo Celis. Him and I have known each other for at least 25 years. We've been doing boxing together for 25 years. And of course, in the middle, we have Canelo Alvarez. And as you can see, he is a lot smaller than what he showed up on September 17th, 2022, because that last fight was actually done at 160 pounds. And this last fight was at 168. And I could bet that he walked into the ring at least 175.
A pretty good face for boxing, I'd say.
Yes, he has indeed. That is Joe Arroyo. He's one of the set of twins, an outstanding fighter from Puerto Rico, and Olympian as well. It's 1 out of 12 sets of brothers that have held world titles. So I'm very proud of Joe and William Arroyo. They're great fighters. Yes.
And finally.
Oh, that's Argis, and he just had a fight against El Gallo Estrada, and he's flanked by Don Nacho Beristain. Don Nacho was the only trainer that Juan Manuel and Rafael Marquez had. He's still perhaps one of, if we can call upon a Bible of boxing, that would be Nacho Beristain. And his gym is the best known gym in Mexico is Romanza, and anybody has at least passed by. He's the, wild card in Los Angeles. That's Romanza in Mexico City.
Okay. No, it's and the boxing world is it's kind of escaped me since I did leave ESPN, because I did get into most of the Olympic sports in the later part of my career. So a lot of these things are just me going down memory lane, and that's why I appreciate you at least letting me show some of your pictures. There's something about you that I find unique as well, and I've worked with Jim Rodriguez. You know Jim very well.
Yes.
And I maybe you know where I'm going with this, but you smoke cigars.
Yes, I do.
And you're aficionado. You're an aficionado.
Yes, I am. Very much so.
And did that come from your upbringing in Colombia, or was that later in life?
Well, back when I was growing up, when you're walking in the farm in Colombia, especially in the area where I come from, which is the valley, If you're going through coffee plantations, they have little itty bitty gnats, and they go in your nose and your ears and your eyes, and so the best way to fend them off is through smoke. So when I used to walk with my dad, he would smoke cigars, homegrown, homemade, nothing fancy. There was no Cohibas, no Montecristos. Because what we do is we rotate plantations. We go coffee, sugar cane, then we do tobacco, and then it just kind of helps the soil to get more nitrogen and different whatever. So there's at any given day you are walking down the field. So my dad would smoke on top of me just to make sure that the gnats were not getting so all over me. And as I grew older, by the time I was 9, the typical age where they tell you, when your dad tells you, yo, change the channel. Remember back in the day when we were the remote control for our parents?
Yep.
So I was the remote control also on the field. So I know millennials are going like, remote control, what?
Yeah.
Like, trust me. There were times that would go clank, clank, clank. Remember those days?
Yeah.
The rabbit ears and stuff. So I was the rabbit ears and the remote for my dad. And he would say, go all the way over there. Let me know if you see anything weird. And, it's like, really, dude? I'm going to walk and no cigar? He goes, yeah, take a little one. So I would take a little one. We don't inhale cigars, so don't be jumping all over the place. Oh, my God, that's child abuse. No, that's what we do. and then in time, it was the thing we did at the end of, the end of the weekend. We would smoke a cigar. And it wasn't like I did it as often as I do now. Once you get into the good stuff, it's like, oh, so this is what this is all about. See, that now you get into, the Nicaraguans, the Ecuadorians, the Dominicans, the Cubans, and it's like, wow. So it doesn't have to taste or smell like, dried leaves.
Yeah.
It's actually good.
Yeah.
So, and that's the beginning of the end. So I really started getting into it, I'd say 87, when I was about 17, 18, 87. And then that was the beginning of the end. Now I have a humidor and scotch with it. It's
Well, I'm no aficionado myself, but I would travel to the Dominican Republic quite a bit. And so I have
let me see that.
it's what's inside the box is not what is on the outside. But I do have a little bit of a cache here.
Nice.
And so I want you to rate my collection here and tell me if you know if they're quality or not. So and so next time, hopefully, I see you, we can actually partake.
Yes.
But
I'll show you more of it.
Okay. Yeah. Brick Horse.
It's a solid cigar. I have yet to smoke it, but it has very good reviews.
Okay. Partagas.
Partagas. Brilliant.
Good. Okay. Good.
Yes.
Príncipes Palma.
Príncipes Palmas. That's another one that I haven't tried. It's a mid-range, especially if you're having a Rubio. Those are nice and solid with vanilla aftertones. So I need to try that one.
Okay. Hoyo de Monterrey.
Hoyo Monterrey. You're in very good company right there.
Okay.
Make sure it's a soft cigar, both Rubio and the Maduro. You can actually pair that with good, solid, like woodsy wines.
Oh, good. Cumbres Pariscal.
I don't know where that's.
Yeah, it was really hard for me to read the label. It was really, really small, but now the label has kind of come down a little bit. But
yeah, I don't know that cigar.
But yeah, that's what I have in my collection. You said you have your collection out?
Yeah. Here I have Perdomo, Lot 23. This is Nicaraguan. This is a very special Davidoff for me. I like Davidoff.
Okay.
This is a Rubio. This right here is an H. Upmann Reserva. This, my friend.
Say no more.
Yeah. Okay, this is Un Padrón, 1926. This is a beautiful, somewhat of a spicy cigar, but it's a beautiful cigar. Now, this is this. This is a very expensive cigar, and I keep it for a very special occasion. I actually took it to the Canelo fight, didn't get a chance to smoke it, but this is the anniversary series by Padron. So you see the difference.
Yeah.
These are two Padrons. But this is a 1926, and this is the anniversary series. This is a torpedo. And this is your one and only Monte Cristo. See, the wonderful thing about buying cigars in Dominican or Nicaragua is that you can't go wrong because the leaf is so good, the soil is so fertile that they know what they're doing. Even sometimes, like I go to local Vegas, and they're like torcidos right then and there, and they're brilliant. They're no names. It's called 8, and it has no brand, no label, and it's beautiful, beautiful, and it's $8. For God's sakes, can't go wrong.
Yeah, well, gonna have to figure that out next time I smoke one. But thank you for at least making sure that what I have is decent.
Yes, you got good stuff. Make sure you smoke it right, and make sure. By the way, you need that in a humidor. You cannot keep it in that box.
Yeah, no, I just pulled it out for this. So.
Okay, good, good.
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that.
All right, Claudia, a couple more questions for you. If you have something for this, that's great. If not, but what would you say the best memento you have in all the years you've been working? Or the most memorable?
1996, the most memorable. The lighting of the torch, 1996 Olympics. I had a chance to see Muhammad Ali. We didn't have rights. I was still working in Los Angeles. And he walked right in front of me. As he was being taken, he was being ushered to go to light up the Olympic torch. That perhaps is one of the most, if there's such a word as truest, which I know there is no word, but that was the truest, most authentic moment in my career. The reason I do boxing today is because of Muhammad Ali. I fell in love with Muhammad Ali when I was about 6 years old. And in my book, he was bigger than life. That was the first and last time I ever saw him. I never saw him again.
Wow.
And to see a man that transcended the sport, religious beliefs, social status, and his own illness. And for him to be standing there, and he was so stoic and so proud despite his ailment. All I have to do is show up. I don't have any of that.
Yeah. Spoken very true. All right, I'm going to leave you with one more question.
Yes.
And this one's on a lighter note. What is your favorite sports film? And it could be in the boxing world if you so choose.
It has to be Raging Bull. It has to be Raging Bull. And it's not just because of boxing. It's because of how honest the film is. Mm-hmm. Rocky 2 is the toughest film for me to watch. And there's that monologue where Rocky says, it's not how hard you hit. Life is like boxing. It's not how hard you hit. It's how hard you get hit and you keep going. So I take very particular moments of those fights. They just happen to be boxing movies. But I love the Mighty Ducks just because, the improbable is possible. Which is, it's the underlying subject in sports movies is, the combination of, the odds and how just hard work and dedication gets you to another level. And it's so true.
Yeah. Very good. Well, Claudia, thank you so much for your time. I do have something here that next time I see you, when we do actually smoke a cigar, I would like for you to sign this for me.
It would be my pleasure.
And that way I can put it back here somewhere or whatever backdrop I have in the future. But that would be so cool for me, especially having worked with you, getting to know you, seeing what you've done. And I'm really proud that you're a Hall of Famer now, and that'll live with you forever. You are immortalized.
I know. Thank you, Don. And you got to remember that when we did boxing together, and you even had to produce me for a All-Star game. I think you forgot about that.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
I did it with Eddie P, with Eddie Perez.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And yes, I don't forget.
I do, and that's part of the reason I started this podcast, because my memories are going out the door. But people have such great stories, and that's what I'm trying to capture. Not just the technical behind the scenes, but really what they've done and what they've accomplished, and some of the stories that they have, which you shared with me today so graciously. So thank you so much.
No, but what I meant to say was thank you, because behind any type of talent, there's always that diligent producer that's busting his ass to make sure we look and sound decent. And you were always extremely, extremely helpful in your candor. Even when all hell was breaking loose, you kept everything together, and you just said, right now, we're just crashing. We're not going to burn, but we're crashing.
Right.
So do you remember that was a game we went to 16 innings?
It's coming back to me as you're talking. Yes. Yeah.
It was a long night.
Yeah. Do you remember what city that was?
No,
Okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
But I just wanted to thank you for always thinking of me. I know we don't talk all the time, but it's always so beautiful to see your notes and saying hi.
Yep.
So thank you for always keeping me in mind.
No, thank you. And I look forward to big things to continue to come for you. So best of luck to you.
Amen. Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, Claudia and I just scratched the surface in this episode. So to find out more about her and her incredible background, and if you happen to be looking for a motivational speaker, visit ClaudiaTrejos.com. Also check out her book, Against the Ropes, when it's released. For more Sports in the Making podcast episodes, visit our YouTube page, Sports in the Making Podcast, or take a listen on your favorite audio podcast platform. Also be sure to check out Twitter @SportsMaking, as well as the Facebook page. Thank you for listening to Sports in the Making. I'm Don Cardona.